Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07, all you breakfast tacos out there. It's O'Connor and Company, where we like to remind you every single day.
Sí se puede.
That's right. Seize the day, my friends. Get out there and carpe diem. It's O'Connor here and Gunlock there.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. Don't use that, oh, I tolerate Larry voice. Oh, I know what you're conveying.
That was a bit of a Newman. Good morning, Julie. Yeah,
Was it?
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't mean it that way. But I know you're conveying to all the other women out there who are listening. It's like, imagine what I have to go through. That's the message we're sending. As bad as it may be,
touchy this morning.
As bad as it may be at your house with your relationships, look at what I'm forced to endure. At least you're not counting penguins. That's what you're saying.
A little reference to yesterday's show.
It's 6:35. Cal Thomas will be here. 7:05. Are you vexed right now on college admissions and acceptances for your kids? We'll speak with an expert. 7:35. Representative Mike Waltz on yesterday's hearing on the Afghan withdrawal. And then at 8:15, we'll talk all things Cherry Blossom with Lauren Boland. All right. So I just led us into the news break there a few minutes ago by saying unbelievable, incredible Supreme Court reversal allowing the Texas state law to go forward so that law enforcement there, if they encounter someone in the country illegally, that they can then arrest them and process them, right?
Right.
And this was a reversal from the day before when the Supreme Court decided to put a halt to it.
Yeah.
The deadline had hit. So it's like, wow, this is huge. In fact, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton at 2:30 yesterday said, huge win. Texas has defeated the Biden administration's and ACLU's emergency motions at the Supreme Court. Our immigration law, SB 4, is now in effect. As always, it's my honor to defend Texas and its sovereignty. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
Until about 3.5 hours ago. And I hadn't seen this.
Do these people sleep?
When I led you into the news and I said, stay tuned for the great news in Texas about border security. And then I saw this headline: Appeals Court again blocks Texas from arresting and deporting migrants. What they mean, of course, truthfully and legally, is illegal aliens. The surprise ruling came hours after the U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for SB 4 to take effect during legal challenges.
Okay, I'm confused, and I know I'm not a lawyer, but I didn't think there was an appeal after the Supreme Court.
Well, I think that this appeal, so all of the Supreme Court hasn't made a final decision on anything.
Yeah.
Everything that we've been hearing from the Supreme Court has been stays or decisions to lift a stay or allow a stay while arguments are being heard. That's all this is.
Right.
But yes, I thought that, if the Supreme Court says, no, we're not going to allow this stay to go forward, the law can continue until the arguments are done. But I'm guessing, and let me read on, because I think the appeals court has now issued a stay under different circumstances. Okay. And so now the Supreme Court will have to hear that because this is what they do. According to the ABC News write-up, in the late-night decision, the appeals court dissolved a pause on an order from a lower court that prevented the law from going into effect until litigation is concluded. On Wednesday, the appeals court will hear arguments in the case to determine if the law should remain on hold until the court rules on SB 4's legality. So, in other words, they're hearing arguments today, and it says the court has long recognized that the regulation of entry and removal of non-citizens is inseparably intertwined with the conduct of foreign relations and thus vested solely in the federal government. The administration wrote in a filing with the U.S. Supreme Court earlier this month. That's what the Biden administration said. So the court is hearing it today. In the meantime, there is this new stay for this appeal. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
I guess. I mean,
kind of.
It makes sense in that the judicial system is always going to bend over backwards and do whatever they can to thwart this kind of thing, because that's just what's been, this archaic invested mentality in these courts.
This is why lawyers make lots of money also.
Yeah.
There's always more appeals and more cases to consider.
Right, but the bottom line here is the state of Texas is trying to do whatever they can to protect their people and protect the citizens. And understand something. All of the efforts from the Biden administration that you're seeing here, every bit of man-hour, every bit of rhetoric, and the use of the bully pulpit, and the use of the press secretary in her briefings, the use of the Justice Department, the use of the courts, and trying to put pressure on the courts, all of it is to one end, and that is to allow all of these people who are here illegally to stay illegally. If you really believe their rhetoric that they are just as concerned about the immigration crisis as anyone else, and they would love to reach a solution, maybe they would actually work with the state of Texas and say, well, what can we do together here to fix the problem? What can we do? But they're lying.
Yeah.
They're lying. We know they're lying. They know we know they're lying, but they keep on lying because they get away with lying because they think that it doesn't matter that we know that they're lying. In fact, they know that we know that they know that we know that they're lying. You know,
they keep lying. They just keep lying to us. But meanwhile, while all these appeals go through, and while Texas tries, to sort of salvage any sense of sovereignty, people are really suffering. We have endless, I feel like, reports of crimes by illegal aliens. We have fentanyl coming in through the southern border. We have children going missing. We have sexual assaults and rapes among these illegal alien women and children. It is an absolute tragedy that the Biden administration just refuses to deal with. It is, again,
it's
something
because
Texas is desperately trying to deal with, but can't.
This is one thing that I've learned in observing politics in close range. I've been watching politics my entire adult life since I was mesmerized by the first man that I really sort of recognized and followed as my president, Ronald Reagan. But now in the last, 13, 14 years, I've been able to watch it in close range. 15 years I've been watching it in close range. And here's one thing that we all need to sort of come to grips with, and that is when stuff like that, everything that you just described and the tragedy and the horror and everything that's going on, if it is happening, it's happening because there are people in powerful positions who want it to happen. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. So all of the devastation that you just described that tugs on the heartstrings and violates the empathy and compassion and sense of fairness and justice that every person is born with. Mm-hmm. Everything that we find objectionable here and heartbreaking in the humanity that is being devastated, it's because people want it to happen. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason,
very hard for me.
Financial reasons, for political reasons, for power reasons, all of the above.
For votes.
It's so to retain
That's
power,
right.
to retain power, and to keep this entire system going.
You see the Biden administration turning its back on Israel. That is entirely because they're worried about losing Rashida Tlaib and people like that. That is entirely political, and it is so depressing. I think it is hard for me. I grew up in the Midwest. I think it is hard for me to sometimes come to terms with this, despite my many years in this city, in this swamp. It's still hard for me, but you're absolutely right. It's on purpose.
And so, one must wonder, as this continues, you get Joe Biden, as we just mentioned, on the exact same day that the courts reversed itself, and then the lower court goes to a Mexican restaurant and tries to say, I need you badly, he said. Yeah. I need you badly. And
I love Cesar Chavez. Yeah.
And so it's like, please square that circle for me. Jill, can you help us with it? Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. As those very same Latinos are dying in the desert after being raped and sexually abused, and their children are being sexually trafficked, and Joe Biden makes jokes about it. This is where we are, and this is how deadly serious it is. And, the courts need to handle this quicker. And by the way, I don't want to give anybody false hope. My guess is the Supreme Court is going to ultimately say, you know what, as awful as this is still the federal government's job. So if you want to fix the problem, the states need to put pressure on the federal government to fix the problem, either through winning elections or other means. And we're right back where we started.
Yeah. Mark Levin, weeknights from 6 till 9.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
I'm not surprised, but I am saddened to have to report to you that the Democratic Party circa 2024 is not a serious party, and certainly not one that cares about our military and about our foreign policies and wars that they were more than happy to help start. Yesterday, the House Armed Services Committee Foreign Affairs Committee had a special hearing to discuss the circumstances surrounding the withdrawal of troops in Afghanistan that led to the murder of 13 service members. Not one Democrat.
Oh, it's just awful.
Not one showed up.
Oh.
As Democrats will campaign over the next 9 months, telling you how much they care about the troops and how much they support the troops, I want them to support the troops. I want some things to not be partisan. I want some things to be, transcend and be about, the men and women who wear the uniform. At the very least, earlier we heard Christine Blasey Ford saying, only 2 Republicans even made eye contact with me and talked to me. They showed up for the hearing.
Yeah, exactly.
They showed up for the hearing that was based on a lie, by the way. If they didn't look at you, it's probably because they couldn't look a liar in the face and acknowledge and even give you that respect because you don't deserve it, because they knew that you were going to lie under oath. There are family members, there are parents who are still grieving because the President of the United States refuses to even say these service members' names and acknowledge that there have been no public apologies. There's been no understanding of what actually happened with the withdrawal of troops in Afghanistan and whose decision it was. They're all passing the buck. They all point the fingers to each other. Not one person wearing the uniform in command has been fired because of what happened in Afghanistan and their part in the decision-making process. And now here's Congress in their oversight role having a hearing to get testimony so that we can get the truth. And not one Democrat deigned to even show up and participate.
Absolutely shameful. And I don't think there was much coverage from the news channels as well. Oftentimes for these sort of big hearings, they'll cover them live.
Yeah.
And
Fox News and News Nation were the only 2 that did. That's my understanding based on monitoring from Media Research Center that watched it. Representative Corey Mills, who is a former service member and is also, he's been rescuing stranded Americans in Haiti, rescued stranded Americans in Afghanistan, rescued stranded Americans in Israel. He had plenty to say.
General McKenzie, is that you've made multiple comments in the media and otherwise to the extent that a brave hero, in my opinion, who has sacrificed his limbs for this country, Sergeant Tyler Vargas Andrews, that his recollection of the events that took place on August 26, to quote you, sir, that he was not recalling this correctly. Well, part of this. Where were you on August 26, sir?
Tampa, Florida.
Well, I can tell you where Sergeant Vargas Andrews was, and he was sitting at the gate. And I would trust on-ground information far more than someone who's sitting 9, 10, 11,000 miles away, who's potentially watching from ISR and potentially being briefed by the commanders on the ground, that his testimony, which has been corroborated, by the way, by multiple Marines who have testified before this committee, that the events that he has actually made common and made clear actually did take place. And we're fortunate enough, General McKenzie, that the gentleman who actually endured the most from this, who was on the ground, and ground truth matters, as we all know, is sitting right there. So would you like the opportunity to tell Sergeant Vargas right there that he is not recalling the incidents that occurred on August 26 correctly, that he and his fellow Marines are not actually the ones who said there was a Ebola of this description, that he is incorrect in his assessment, which is putting into question his integrity. Do you want to face him and tell him that before him now?
I don't want to face him and tell him that. I want to say that the battlefield is a very complex place. There are a lot of threats that were flowing around out there that day. I honor his service. I regret he was injured.
Have you spoke to him since then?
I have not spoken to him since
then. So you obviously haven't honored him, nor has anyone else come to even question him about what took place, even after our committee a year ago.
I
so
believe
the bottom
that
line,
you are
sir,
wrong.
I'm still
I
talking.
believe he has
sir,
been questioned.
General, the bottom line is that he deserved that respect like these Gold Star families deserve that respect. And to question his integrity, to question what took place on August 26th that he observed from his own eyes and sacrificed his limbs for, that you're unwilling to actually face him and actually tell him the same thing that you were willing to say to MSNBC and all the rest, which is that his recollection is incorrect and that there was no such thing. It's shameful.
Good for Corey Mills to, by the way, remind the general that they answer to a civilian government and they don't speak over us. Thank you very much. When someone puts on the uniform and is willing to give their life in combat, when their parents are willing to do what it takes, or their spouses or their children, to live that life and know that at any given time that individual could lose their life in combat at the direction of the chain of command. At the very least, at the end of the day, if something horrible like that happens, at the very least, we expect our government in their oversight role to bring out the truth, let us know what happened so that we can live with the understanding that the idea of America continues to thrive. What we continue to see here with the Afghanistan pullout and how the parents of those victims are being treated and their spouses and their children are being treated, it is one of the greatest embarrassments of our lifetime. And it all starts with the President of the United States.
You are the father of a currently serving military member. I have a child who wants to join the military. It is incredibly worrisome to see military officials so disregard the testimony of a soldier who was on the ground and saw what happened as he sits in his air-conditioned office in Tampa, Florida, and says that he knows better than what this soldier saw on the ground.
And you'll remember the testimony is the sniper said, I've got him in my sights. I see him.
And they told him to stand down.
Stand down. I said, I got him. I can kill him now. I can shoot him now. I can shoot him. Nope. Stand down.
I just want to say one other thing. When you think about how many law enforcement officers have been highlighted, praised in the media, brought up to Congress to testify with regards to the January 6th insurrection-y kind of stuff, you think about the just the courting of Congress of these law enforcement officers. And I'm not here to debate that, but the point is how they have memory hold. These 13 service members, how Congress, the Democrats in Congress are not interested. The Republicans are.
Yeah, they get nothing. They don't get their special ceremonies.
Nothing.
They don't get
Biden
their day
looking
on the
at his
rotunda.
watch when their bodies are brought back to Dover. Yeah. This is the level of respect Democrats have for the military.
And you wonder why recruitment numbers are low right now. You wonder why, other than the Marines, nobody's hitting their recruitment numbers. This is why. Because we understand what you're signing up for. At the very least, give us the respect. This is like Vietnam, or what I'm told Vietnam was like after Vietnam. All right, coming up at 7:35, we're going to speak with Congressman Mike Waltz, retired Green Beret. I shouldn't say retired, actually. He's still serving in the National Guard. He'll be joining us to talk about this hearing yesterday. We've got more audio from the generals as well. We'll try to get to it.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:37 on this Wednesday morning in your nation's capital. Thank you so much. It's the 20th day of March. It's spring. The blossoms are on the cherry trees. It's a great time to be alive and to be in Washington, D.C. I mean, George Stephanopoulos is getting sued for defamation. Woo-hoo! Coming up at 7:05, Lori Kopp Weingarten. This is also the time of season when a lot of you parents are making that agonizing decision about where your kids are going to college. We'll talk about how things are a little different this year. 7:35, Representative Mike Waltz, who was a big player in that Afghanistan withdrawal hearing yesterday. And then at 8:15, Lauren Boland, spokesperson for the Cherry Blossom Festival.
Great lineup.
Julie Gunlock there.
Good morning.
Larry O'Connor here. Cal Thomas, do you miss the cherry blossoms? You know you do. Don't lie. Come on.
He's probably in Japan.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Konnichiwa, Cal.
I was just up last weekend in Washington. I saw the cherry blossoms, and they're beautiful as always.
All right. Good. What do you mean you were just up here? We didn't get...
Where was our invitation?
Exactly. I actually went to, it's funny. I went to Metro 29 Diner last week, which is Cal Thomas's stomping ground. Yes, and I was a little wistful. I was like, oh, you know what? And any other time, Cal would be here.
He ran into the bathroom when he saw you walk in.
Yeah, that's right. That's very good, Julie. Very good. Yeah. Well, actually, I was leaving early, hoping that he'd be stuck with a check.
That's right. So that was you.
That was me. Yeah.
All right, Cal.
Anyway,
listen.
Go ahead. I was
ahead.
really up there. I was studying to be a high Clinton advisor, since George Stephanopoulos is now a journalist. See, so I think it ought to go both ways.
I am always I have a double-edged appreciation for defamation law in this country, because I do think we should give journalists and journalistic endeavors the benefit of the doubt, and I think that they found a pretty good balance with the actual malice or reckless disregard of the truth. But this thing, Cal, it was a reckless disregard for the truth, because ABC News itself, I played the audio earlier, they reported at the time the decision came in that the jury specifically decided not to find Trump liable for rape, but for sexual abuse. I think there really is a suit. Do you think he's going to apologize and correct the record?
Of course not. Nobody apologizes in Washington. Look at the hearings yesterday of the two generals. It was all the State Department's fault. Actually, it was Joe Biden's fault. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the one who ordered it. He was responsible for the 13 who died, and nobody gave the authorization to take out the terrorist who was in the sight of one of our soldiers. Yeah. But in Washington, the only people who take credit for anything are those who can claim victory. You know that old line, victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. That still applies in D.C.
You know, what do you think, though, also about no Democrats showing up for this hearing? The optics of that are so bad, and yet Democrats get away with that. Well, what is with the lack of curiosity and interest in getting to the bottom of this disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan? And even if you sort of disagree, like, okay, what we needed to get out of Afghanistan, at least looking at how this was conducted and the loss of life, what is that Democrats just don't care?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of them show up, including Ranking Member Meeks, who tried to make this not a problem for the Biden administration, but going back several administrations to George H.W. Bush and to W. and all of this. So it wasn't really Biden's fault. The Democrats, all of them, should have shown up at least to honor those who had fallen in combat, the parents, the relatives who were there, the people in the back row with the faux red blood on their hands. I mean, where is our patriotism anymore? Why don't the Democrats do this? They don't talk about loving our country. We're flooding the country with people who are not Americans. The appeals court yesterday, right after the Supreme Court ruled that it was okay for Texas to enforce its law to arrest illegal immigrants, which the federal government is not doing and not applying the law. An appeals court then said, no, you can't do that. We've got to put that on hold. I mean, this reminds me of an old song. First you say you will, and then you won't. First you say you do, and then you don't. You're undecided now, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I'm only used to hearing that in 4-part harmony, though, but that's really beautiful. Who was the original on that?
Thank you very much. Well, I used to do it in 4-part harmony, but now I'm down to bipolar.
You're not nearly as schizo as you're pretending. Cal Thomas, real fast as we move forward now, there's some rumors about Donald Trump and his he's announced now that it will not. He's ruled Vivek Ramaswamy out. Who do you think Trump might pick for his running mate? And do you think that he'll make that decision sooner rather than later, just to sort of mix up the dynamic in the race?
Well, I think as critics would say, try to pick somebody who's already in prison, and that way you'll have somebody who relates well to you. I don't know. It's very, very early, and he got all these other unbelievable court cases. I'm sure you've read this on the air, but it bears repeating. The Eighth Amendment to the Constitution: excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed. This is an excessive fine that Letitia James has done in New York. It really is outrageous. It's going to drive businesses out of New York, the ones that haven't left already, and a lot of people too. It's a very dangerous thing just to get a political leader, which was her whole reason for running for office in the first place. I mean, this is a violation of the Constitution. The court should step up and impose that.
Oh, well, they will. I'm sure they will eventually. But in the meantime, they have an election to win, Cal. That's
exactly right. And that's what this is all about, whether you're a pro-Trumper or an anti-Trumper. I am pleased to see that there are some Democrats, some liberals in the media, who are, even Ruth Marcus in today's Washington Post, of all things, has said that this has gone too far, that this is not right. Well, God bless her. It's about time more people stood up, because what is happening to somebody else could happen to you and to your business.
Yeah, when Ruth Marcus is to the right of David French on a legal issue, you know that something's wrong. Hey, Cal, thanks. Always good to talk with you.
Thanks, guys.
It's 6:50, and I want to share a little bit more from this hearing yesterday about the Afghanistan withdrawal, because coming up at 7:30, we're going to have Mike Waltz, Congressman, and Green Beret in Congress, covering this. Here's a little bit more from General Kenneth McKenzie. You just heard the one clip with Corey Mills that we just played, if you're just joining us, where he basically said, the sergeant on the ground who actually saw the terrorists coming and reported what happened, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I was there in Tampa at CENTCOM, and I know better than him, right? Here's a little bit more from Mackenzie.
April 2021, I received orders from President Biden through the Secretary of Defense to execute a full military withdrawal by 11 September 2021, a date which was subsequently modified to the end of August. This decision did not include the withdrawal of our embassy, our citizens, and at-risk Afghans. It's important to understand that we had a complete plan to execute that task as well, but were not ordered to do so. The President's decision was to maintain an embassy, to not require our citizens to leave, and of course, to not expedite the extraction of at-risk Afghans. Yeah. This was not a military decision.
That's very important, that they're claiming that it was the administration and the State Department that said, no, we're not going to evacuate citizens or any of those other things because they believed the Taliban would keep security and control and stability in that country. They were obviously very wrong. And then General Milley.
Are they in jail, dead, some of them?
I think some were killed. Afghans. I don't know about the Americans.
He's talking about our allies, the Afghans who were left behind.
Yeah.
Americans. I don't think the Americans were, but I think some of the Afghans were tracked down that worked with us, and I think some of them were killed, and I'm pretty certain some of them in pretty brutal ways. Some were managed to escape through various means. Others have just laid low and keeping their heads down.
I really love the matter-of-fact delivery, too, by the way. Good luck next time we have a foreign excursion where we go into another country and we ask the locals to help us out.
Yeah, absolutely brutal.
As I mentioned, Representative Mike Waltz joining us at 7:35 to talk about this and break it down even further. Right now, it is 6:52.